Ladies and gentlemen, it's 1 o'clock. Will you please call this to order? Sorry. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Member McGordy?
Did you say McGordy?
Yes. Member Weir?
Here.
Member Angelo?
Here.
Member Miller?
Here.
Member Riley? Here. Sheriff Allman?
Here.
Member Myrtle?
Here.
Member Muschetti?
Here.
Member Liberty?
Very
Here.
Thank you. Member Diamond?
Here.
And let the record reflect that Chair Barash is absent.
Thank you. So is there anyone in the public who would like to make any expression for any item that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to agenda item number 3A, discussion and possible action regarding expenditure report on Measure B tax funds. Mr. Weir.
Yes. So I'm going to be referring to the spreadsheet that we get at all the meetings. This one has been updated now through the June 2019 payment, which is our 13th monthly payment. You can see that I have all of the monthly amounts and then a running balance on the right-hand side for the revenues. After 13 months, we're at $8,730,796. Then below that would be the total expenses to date and a running total of my expenses, our expenses, which total $228,187. Drop down all the way to the bottom. I brought down the life-to-date revenue amount and the life-to-date expense amount, and the earnings on the fund so far are $36,414 interest earnings, which is through the third quarter. We still have the fourth quarter to go. But currently, there's a balance in the fund of $8,539,023.
Thank you. Do we have any committee comment?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Dunn.
I'm just curious about the interest earnings. That's a significant amount. I'm just curious of where the earnings come from. Where's the money invested in the funds that we have?
So our money is deposited into our fund, which is part of the treasury pool, and our treasurer, by law, is allowed to invest in certain investments that are safe, low risk, and as a matter of fact, throughout this year, our interest rate has been climbing slightly. It's not a lot, it's still 1.5%, 1 3/4, but it has been going up, so that is true.
Good, thanks.
Yes, Ms. Riley.
On another random note that I think is interesting for the community, it looks like if you compare year over year, just the June revenues, sales tax revenue in the county is up about 25%. That's important for Measure B and for the county, so yay for the county.
Thank you. Anyone else on the committee? Jan?
Yeah, I was going to say essentially the same thing, that comparing between April last year and April this year, there's a difference of $169,000.
Thank you. Any other comment from the committee? Anyone in the public? Hearing none. We will move on to agenda item 3B, approval of minutes of the May 22nd, 2019 minutes. Clerk.
What you have before you are the minutes for May 22nd. You will notice that there have been a few minor corrections to even the ones that I distributed yesterday. So I believe I have addressed all of the typos that were identified.
Alden would like to make a motion that we accept the minutes, approve the minutes as presented today.
Second.
Hold on one moment, please. Is there any comment from the committee on the minutes? Hearing none. Public? Thank you. I'm sorry, Sheriff.
Make a motion. There was a second, I think, over there.
Who seconded? Ms. McGordy. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. We move on to agenda item number 3C, approval of minutes of the July 8th meeting. County Clerk.
The same for the minutes from July 8th. You will notice that the minutes that you have in front of you have a few minor corrections as well.
Any committee comments on the minutes for July 8th? Public? Do I have a motion to accept?
I'll move approval.
Second Almond.
Thank you. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 3D, discussion and possible action regarding the update on the purchase of Regional Behavioral Health Training Center and Sheriff's Substation. Sheriff Allman, would you like to speak to that, please?
I think I'm going to defer to Carmel Angelo on this one, to see if she can start on this, the business part of it, yeah.
Sure.
So regarding this property, we had our meeting here, our special meeting on July 8th, and a recommendation to move forward with the purchase of this property on East Road in Redwood Valley for a training center with a 70-30 split, 70% being Measure B, 30% being the county. And we went to the board the next day on the 9th in closed session, and the board gave direction on this, and then we made an offer on this property. So we purchased this property for $389,000. When we purchased this property, there were 3 other offers on this property, and the original price of this property was $389,000. When we were told about the property, and when we saw the property, and when some of the Measure B committee went out to see the property, the listing price had dropped to $369,000. So when we got the approval from the board and contacted the realtor, the question to the realtor, given that there were 3 offers on this property, was, what is the offer that's going to get us this property? And so we came up with $389,000, which was the original price for this property. And so the seller accepted our offer. So we gave a $5,000 deposit into escrow, and we are in escrow with this property. We're hoping for a 30-day escrow. We're in the process of doing inspections on this property right now. Sheriff?
That's
Is that
exactly
everything?
correct, and the board certainly approved of this, and in that, the $20,000 change, remember, it was a 70-30 split, so isn't $20,000 incumbent upon this Measure B fund. It's only 70%, rather the rest come from the Sheriff's Office.
And I would like to make a comment. There has been a little bit of pushback on the fact that we held a special meeting for this. There is no mandate that we cannot, and the chair can call a meeting at any time as long, and please correct me if I'm wrong, as long as it is in accordance with the Brown Act.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Thank you. Do we have any committee comment?
I would like to start by stating this was a unique piece of property. It is a unique piece of property of being able to accommodate the majority of what we need. And the price certainly was lower than the community average pricing for commercial real estate. And I think that the more we learn, the more about the property, the more we realize that this was a very good deal, and that was the purpose of accelerating a meeting, calling a special meeting, was that there were other purchasers that were ready for this, and by delaying that decision to what would have been today, would have not allowed us to be in the driver's seat of the purchase, and would have allowed us to purchase this most likely only if one of the other offers had fallen out of escrow.
Thank you, Sharon. Member Riley, you're next.
I am just curious if any additional analysis has been done regarding the zoning or CEQA requirements for the property, if there's any additional information available about that.
I'm sorry, I'm ignorant and have to know who I need to refer to.
I don't see Nash
The
here.
answer is yes.
That-
The answer
Who's
is
there?
yes.
Ash was here.
Where is that? He would be hiding by Margaret.
Mr. Gonzalez, do you have anything to highlight?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. Member Merrill, you're next.
Again, I have some community feedback concerning the special meetings as well as the prioritizations of the sheriff's substation and behavioral health training center. and priority to the other mental health facilities. So I explained much which has been explained today, that this was a unique opportunity and we needed to act quickly, and I supported the decision to buy the property because it was such a good deal. And financially, we couldn't build or create a replica, so I think it's a good thing for the committee and the community.
Thank you, Member Myrtle. Member Diamond?
Yeah, I had a chance, as did a number of the other committee members, to see the property and to then discuss it. And it just seemed to be a very unique opportunity to get something that would be of benefit to both Measure B and the broader community in terms of training. And ordinarily, I would like to see things go in a fairly orderly way, that we plan ahead for our next meeting, but occasionally there's a happening, and I think this was one of them, where an opportunity was present that we needed to at least get a look at and address quickly, and I think we were wise to have checked it out, and I think the decision was a good one that's going to be a benefit to our mission here, as well as the related missions for training in these areas.
Thank you, Member Diamond. Member McGordy?
Yeah, I've heard nothing but excitement over the opportunity of this project. I'm just wondering, since it kind of blindsided us, we had never discussed it in this committee, that training center is a priority. If we wanted to think about having some kind of ad hoc committee to discuss any kind of renovation or the purpose of it or that kind of thing.
Thank you. Any other further comment from the committee? Members of the public, please.
I'll just add that,
Supervisor
I think it was a bargain. It was,
Could you please tell us who you are, sir?
Dan,
Go to the podium.
Sir,
Don't be shy.
please tell us who you are.
Dan Jurdy, 4th
State
District
your
Supervisor. So at $130 a square foot, I think it was a bargain. You can't build that, as Mark said, on the open market today, and it only represented 1% of the funds that Measure B has for facilities. So it still leaves 99% of the funds available for the other types of facilities that you guys are working on. So I think if you explain it that way to people, which is the way I've been explaining it to people, I think people understand it, that it's a bargain that couldn't be passed up.
Thank you, Supervisor. Yes, ma'am, please come up to the podium, state your name.
Joe Bradley, you've seen me here before. I'm actually was out of town. I would have come and seen the facility, but I think this is a great opportunity because we can start our training now. We don't have to wait for the other buildings, but we have to start the training because the people on the ground, the first responders, need to understand what they're working with. And then we can go from there. Because most of them do not know what they're working with yet. So I'm thrilled, and I really hope that you start working on it, training right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes?
John Wetzler, ex-member of the Mental Health Board. I've got my bucket of cold water here. And it's not because of what you did or what happened. It's the policy. As chairman of the Mental Health Board, I wouldn't have had a special meeting without talking to my board first, and then having a special meeting, and then obviously going and looking at the property. Everybody should have gone and looked at the property before it was put into escrow. So that's a policy issue that I would think would be something that you might want to think about adopting, that a special meeting. You did it there's no problem with the way you did it, but it just doesn't bring the entire 11-member board in on it. I knew nothing about it. I talked to quite a few people who knew nothing about it. And I'm sure it was put out, I'm sure it was in the paper, I'm sure it was on the media. But I think that in the future, any special meeting should be announced to the full, and you should decide amongst yourselves whether you're going to have a special meeting or not. And that's my 2 cents for now. Thank you.
Chair, do I have the opportunity to respond?
Yes, ma'am, you do.
I would like to just say that our rules of procedure say that at any time a member may ask to have an item on the agenda. We referred to the chair who said, yes, we should have the agenda based on the need for the timing of the item. We then pulled the committee members individually to see who would be available. We scheduled according to that. We did have a tour of the facility on the agenda so that all the members of the committee were able to view the facility and any members of the public prior to adjourning the meeting here for consideration. So I would like to duly reply that it was noticed appropriately in the newspapers, followed Brown Act completely, and all of the things that you requested actually did happen.
Great.
Thank you.
Go, girl.
And I may be out of place, but this is a standing item on the agenda now.
Correct.
Thank you. Excuse me. There is no action on this. It is a standing item. Is everybody okay with that?
This being what?
It is a standing item. It will always be on the agenda until we decide to take it off.
What will be?
The training center.
Ah, gotcha.
Yes, ma'am.
What about an ad hoc committee to, plan in advance?
Do I have any further comment on that?
I do. I think that an ad hoc committee certainly is appropriate. The fact that escrow hasn't closed yet is certainly something that we don't know what we don't know. I'm hoping that we're going to have a meeting next month and we can put on the agenda and have people discuss this. But an ad hoc, in my opinion, an ad hoc committee for the renovation of the training center,
Right.
as well as setting up the training logistics is a very apropos idea.
It-
Yes.
Thank you. Any other committee comments? As chair, and I'm acting chair, sorry. Once escrow goes through and we own the property, I personally believe that an ad hoc committee is good. Any public comment on that? Hearing none, we will move on to agenda item number 3E, discussion and possible action regarding update on status of the architect RFQ and related feasibility study. And Janelle, please.
Hi, Janelle Rao, I'm a deputy CEO for the county, and I assist our CEO in the capacity of the purchasing agent. So I'm just going to go through this really quick. The RFP was issued, RFQ, on the 19th of June. We held a mandatory meeting on July 2nd. There were 11 attendees at that mandatory meeting. So we have 11 actual participants that are now qualified or have the ability to submit proposals. The inquiry deadline was the 16th. We have responses due on August 16th. We're preparing, we have a draft addenda at this point that our target is to issue this coming Monday that will still be in compliance and allow those folks to prepare their proposals accordingly by the 16th submission deadline. The rest of the evaluation periods, we will have and schedule, we will have a written evaluation process occurring in August. Oral presentations will be scheduled. We have a notice to intent to award that will come during that time period. Our target to get to the board is October 22nd. That is it.
Next question, please. So our next meeting is scheduled to be August 28th. By August 28th, what would be the progress by that date?
By August 28th, we should be able to give you a short list of who we would be prepared to invite to oral presentations. So at that point in time, we would have done the initial review that says, here are of the X, Y, or Z proposals, here's who are qualified for the next step in evaluation, which is the written. From the written, we should then have a short list, we call it, you're hoping to refine down your top candidates. I would look to the evaluation panel to determine who we would invite to that. Typically it's between 1 to 3, could be 1 to 5, but I would hope down to the 3. We should have that publicly available to this committee to say, here's where we are in that process, as well as having those dates firmed up.
So you're comfortable to have it put on the agenda for next month?
Absolutely.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, I did not pay attention as to which one of you was first, so I'm going to go with Jed, only because he's in my sightline.
I just had a quick question about whether all the applicants have guidance about what we're asking them to do is.
Yes. If I might, through the chair,
Yes, please.
During the mandatory meeting, it was a fairly extensive Q&A. We had a few of the mental health, your committee members that were also present. There was information that came up that we have already made readily available, including the Kemper report, and also pointed them to the behavioral health website that contains some dashboard information about our current service provision. This addenda we're going to be issuing will also have some background information to give proposers a thorough ability to prepare their responses.
So they will be coming back with a specific proposal of what they would do and what it would cost, is that correct?
Correct. Including timelines.
Including
Timelines for implementation.
Okay, so I presume then at that point, we as a committee here would have an opportunity to look at what the actual work is that's being done and to have input into that, or is this being done prior to this?
I can speak to that. So you have an evaluation panel that's been identified. I don't have that readily at the top of my head, but there are 2 members of this committee that are on that evaluation panel. So the intent was for them to represent the committee in that capacity. And then the short list of oral interviews, the proposals that are, I'll have to work through council to determine whether we make those publicly available or not. Typically we don't, but I'm definitely up to stretching our boundaries as far as we can to ensure that you have as much information possible to know what your evaluation panel is considering. So you have, in a typical process like this, you'll have, we give a fairly straightforward table of content of what we expect in the proposal, but they have a scope, timeline, cost, and we're working on criteria, like when you evaluate these types of proposals, what are the rationale? Usually under architects it's qualification based. Feasibility studies are proposal based, so it's basically best value. So we're a blend right now. And once we have that, we'll bring it back.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Member Diamond. Member Liberty.
So I was reviewing the YouTube videos on our meeting from May 22nd, and the sheriff asked the question about how long will this feasibility study take, and he was kind of pushing for 60 days, wishful thinking, I think, but then and he was 60 to 90 days. And I think the question was asked a little wrong. So really, you asked how long will the feasibility study take, but maybe it should have been how long from now before we have an end game. What is the end date for this so it's actionable, right? Because that's really what you're trying to discover. Because as of today, it's 62 days. And we don't have a proposer yet. I mean, we don't have that narrowed down to even who's going to get it. So my question then, there's a question behind all this actually. So my question then is, from today, what would you anticipate the feasibility study would be finished?
The feasibility study alone?
Yeah, so from today, like by the time you get through all the, the selection and.
What you think? If we had a contract, I'm going to think through it. So if we had the contract awarded, let's just say by the end of October. So let's just say we're kicking off on November 1st. I'm going to finger count. I would think between 60 to 90 days is I think a fair estimate, particularly because we've somewhat narrowed down the field.
But if I may add to that, that's part of
You have to say who you are.
National Executive Office. Part of that too is reviewing the proposals to see what we get. We may say typically 60 days, 90 days, but a proposer could come in and say, we might be able to do this in a shorter period of time or a longer period of time. That's part of the evaluation, is who can give us the product faster. That's why it's kind of hard to pin anybody down to a certain date until we get those proposals in.
Thank you. Janelle, anything to add?
I think it's also worthy to note that this is a kind of a tri-process solicitation. We're looking at feasibility, we're looking at design, and we are looking at environmental. And so the intent with this solicitation and why we did it that way is so that we could be more efficient in our procurement of these services. So we will start this feasibility study and this is in concept, depending upon these proposals, and what we'll be looking at in these proposals is their ability to do this parallel process. So design would be, you would have preliminary design phases while we're conducting feasibility. Once feasibility is presented and you come up with site A, for example, if that's presented to this committee and then our board, they would then finalize those designs and also kick off the remainder of the CEQA process based on that feasibility.
Thank you. Member Myrtle?
Who's on the committee reviewing these proposals from this committee?
You, I think.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'd
Member
like to be
Angelo?
on the committee.
That's good.
So who decides that?
So this is a county, this is a government process, and it's a purchasing and contracting process. So most likely it'll be Janelle and Nash and myself and a few others. And so what we would do is most likely have a sheriff, the auditor, and 2 members from this committee. We usually ask someone from the Behavioral Health Advisory Board, which we did with the interviews. So Member Myrtle wants to be on the committee, and I'm open for one more person. I'm not including myself, the sheriff, and Lloyd, 3 county members. So if there's another community member who would like to be on the source selection committee with us, you're welcome to be there.
Show of hands, people. Nobody
Everybody's
nobody
like,
wants to, I know, hold on.
Jed put his hand up.
Nobody wants to volunteer. Are you volunteering?
Well, I don't
Mr.
know, I
Bennett?
have a question. Is this,
Yes, please, and then I'll go backwards.
okay. I might. My question is, whoever's on the committee, will there be continuing reporting back to the whole board? Because it seems like these things, as they move along, are going to eventually require this whole committee to make a recommendation. And it would be good, I think, if the whole board were apprised of the whole process as it's going along. So that's my question. Whoever's on the committee, would this whole group get regular reports or not?
Sure. Can I answer that question? So how it works is we have a whole RFP process. And so what will happen is the committee will be chosen, and once we get the proposals, those proposals will go out to the committee members, and we'll schedule our meetings. If we have 2 proposals that come in that are very close to each other, it's possible, and I think Janelle may have this on here, to have oral,
Yes.
have meetings where we ask questions and get additional information, and then we get down to that one person, that one proposal. So when we get there, the committee will make a recommendation. The recommendation that's made by the committee will come to the Measure B committee. And then from there, it will go to the Board of Supervisors.
The final
That-
recommendation?
That is how that will work.
Okay.
But it will be the committee that will review the proposals, evaluate the proposals, and make a recommendation to the committee, this committee.
So the committee that you're talking about asking for another member of would report to this whole committee? Just want to get the terms right.
You got it, Jed.
Okay, well, I'd be interested in finding out more about how often and what the requirements of a committee member would be.
So the hope would be that we would have one day to evaluate. The hope is that we get many proposals that are
Right.
responsive to the RFP. We would have one day to evaluate those proposals and actually come up with maybe the top 1 or the top 2. So there's not a lot of time that this would take unless there's some special nuances, and I'll let you know.
Within the RFP itself, there's some relevant timelines that explain this. So we've targeted the evaluation period between August 19th and August 30th. And the reason we did that is we do bring the panel of evaluators together. We get the written proposals that have gone through the initial screening. Let's just say we get 10 of them, and that 10 actually qualify under that initial screening. Those 10 proposals would go to the written evaluation panelists. They would have that period of time to do their reading, a little bit of homework. We'll have some criteria within that when the package comes to them. We then schedule an in-person meeting where we sit and we actually discuss, where are we? Where are we? What are our questions? how did we arrive at these conclusions, and making sure actually that there's consensus amongst the evaluation panelists. Or if you're really far off on one versus the other, we're looking for that expertise to say, here's what I found as a problem here. Or from a CEQA perspective, we would have our panelists say, I had some concerns with their process here. And then from a timeline perspective, we may say these are our issues. The goal is to refine it down for all intents and purposes to at least, no more than 3 that are our top 3. And those 3 would come in then for an oral presentation to the panelists. The panelists then combine those scores. You come up with a summary evaluation, and then we all sit again and go, okay, are we all in agreement? And ensure that what we're presenting has the group's consensus in presenting to this committee and then our board. So it's a process, and it's going to require some time, but as Carmel said, we'll do as much preparation in advance as we can for those that have never sat on a panel, and try to guide them.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'd like to volunteer to be on your panel.
That's great. So we have Member Myrtle and Member Diamond to sit on the source selection committee with us.
There you go. Any more comment, Member Diamond?
Nope.
Anything else from the committee? Anybody? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Gordy.
I'm just wondering of the status of the project manager that's gonna look after this stuff.
Report that out at the end. It's not on.
At the very, I know.
So can't we, when we do committee member reports, can't we?
Committee, oh, yes, it would be on the committee report. Yes, ma'am. Correct, thank you. Anybody else? Public? Any comment from the public? Hearing none, we will move on to agenda item 3F. Discussion and possible action regarding a request for permission from the Board of Supervisors to publish a request for proposal, RFP, for Orchard Street or other location as determined by feasibility study, mental health facility design, possibly design build. And before I turn this over to Member Liberty, I personally would like some clarification for myself and for the committee. I'm going to direct it to County Council, and that may be wrong, so please let me know. I need to be fined $25.
I will.
So my question is, if hypothetically we decide to do this, will this negate the first RFP?
So I'm going to say it's not so much, so the answer is basically yes, but so it's not so much a legal question, although
It's a process.
it's a process question. So I think probably I would again look to Janelle Rao to enlighten us on that issue, or Ms. Ansela.
I will ask Janelle to speak on that, please.
Janelle Rao, Deputy CEO. If in fact what is on the agenda were agreed upon from this committee and presented to our board would then ask these same questions, and the answer is yes, it would negate the process we're currently in because it would change it. It would change the scope of what the current competitive process is asking for. So that's the short answer.
Okay, I have another question. Will it stop this one incomplete?
It would need to. There's good faith competitive processing, and right now you have at least 11 that attended a mandatory meeting that could potentially be investing their time and resources into preparing fairly detailed proposals by the 16th of August. We have to announce something. I mean, typically in my experience in the 20 years, I've never canceled one midway first. So secondly, in order to do that, we're exposing ourselves a bit. We're exposed in a lot of different ways. So we would have to cancel it if you're going to be considering or even developing an alternative, because this would be an alternative to the current 3-part process we're in.
Okay. So we will need to start over? Is that
correct?
And again, once we've midway through one process and then we pull that back and then we go for a slightly different process, I think it can cause us some other problems down the road, but.
Okay, I just wanted those clarifications for my own little brain. Member Liberty.
Oh boy, that's fun. So on, for the May meeting. I was hoping to have something like this on the agenda. It was sort of in competition with what ended up happening, and it didn't happen. But the thought was that because this process is so long, that a lot of architectural work could be done in parallel. And my thought was that could speed the process up. I've since been told that the proposers will likely run in parallel. They'll actually, if somebody gets the job, they will, before they do while they're doing the feasibility study, they'll actually be doing the architectural work. That being the case, there's no need for this, right? But that being the case, we're looking at, what I got from you was, say, February, we'll have a finished feasibility study, and shortly thereafter, we would expect to have a finished architectural work done. If that's the case, then well, actually, I don't think it's my motion to withdraw, because I think that
We have to
Eric
discuss it.
put it up. So,
Yeah.
so we don't need to do it, right? We don't need to do that. But that is on the assumption that they're going to work in parallel and get that architectural done. Because again, time is of the essence. And I read the RFP again, and didn't really. I didn't have that takeaway that there was a sense of urgency, that timeline was a big qualifier. But maybe it will be. But mostly I just wanted to say that I think we should try to get this done as fast as possible. I don't think there's any argument about that. And working in parallel would be a good way to do that. If they're going to do that on their own, great. But this was a way I was trying to accomplish that.
Thank you, Member Liberty. I thought I saw
I
you.
just have a statement, I guess, or a question of, if it's going to Orchard Street, we don't know the RFPs, where they're gonna come out. But one can assume that if it's going to Orchard Street, and I think the county is in negotiations now to finalize the property acquisition, then that would be actually this item. But if it's not gonna be on Orchard, if somebody comes in with another presentation, then I can see where this could derail that, if that makes sense. If somebody's putting all their focus towards this, they're not focusing on some other place. So my question is going to be, and I don't know if anybody could answer it here, maybe council would. But with the RFP going out and being responded to, do we believe the respondents have a pretty good idea of what we, as the 11-person committee, have in mind for whatever the answer is? I don't know, the only way they would know that is if they if they binge watched our committee meetings, which I don't recommend anybody. If they did, they would have a good idea. So I guess I'm just cautioning the RFP or the respondents, don't come in with an off-the-wall solution, because I think that we pretty much voiced our ideas of what we believe, where we believe the direction of the county should be. I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Member Diamond?
Yeah, I think that I have some of the same concerns that some of the other members have. If my memory serves, this committee had narrowed down our recommendations to two, which was the Orchard Street property and the old Howard Hospital property. Am I correct on that, just before I go on? Yes. Is that accurate? Okay. And I've never been involved with an architectural RFP, so I admit I'm not familiar with how this goes. And I tried to find out last time, like, how much it's going to cost to evaluate each facility. And my concern is if one of the facilities is clearly our professional and our evaluative choice, are we going to spend a lot of money evaluating other facilities that really we're not interested in or we don't think are the best choice. And I understand some of the way you find out is the best choice is by doing these in-depth evaluations, but you know, I've talked to a number of the people in my district, in District 3, where the old Howard Hospital is, and there's many people here from the community that have been coming. And I think there's some serious concerns about whether the old Howard Hospital would be appropriate. And I think there's a lot of people in the district who feel the old Howard Hospital would be, from the community's point of view, the best choice. So I'm kind of where some of the others are. I want to move things along, but I also am cognizant that we will be recommending to the full board, I would guess, and again, if anybody can help me with, is this a fairly expensive thing to evaluate each of the potential sites? I don't want to waste our community money that we get the reports from Lloyd each time. There's a significant amount of money. I want to be sure we're doing evaluation, we're not wasting public funds. So that's my concern about how the process goes.
Thank you, Member Diamond. Member McGorty?
From the last meeting, it was my understanding, it was brought up that it was legally required to have a review of 2 different sites. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so just choosing one wouldn't have fulfilled that requirement, in my understanding.
I got that too. It's a question of we need more than one, which, or if we have 2, which are they? Sorry, I'm interrupting.
Sorry, I think that's actually a Nash question as in terms of the legal requirement. That's not, and I think you're misinterpreting what he's talking about in terms of the 2 different sites. Right. It's a CEQA analysis, so I don't know if he left. But
it's been clarified, I think, Commissioner Romero.
Right.
Thank you, Member McGorty. Member Angelo, please.
Thank you. The only thing I wanted to comment on is it's almost like we keep going in circles here because this committee made a recommendation and that was a grueling process, if anybody remembers this. And the recommendation was Howard Hospital and Orchard and to have those 2 locations reviewed. And so I think that's obviously what we're asking the architect to do. Regarding the amount of money and time that would go into this, I don't think anybody at this table right now could say that one of those 2 locations should be thrown out. Then we shouldn't have ever put that location on. So there has been a review of Howard Hospital that was done a couple years ago. That will be part of the information that goes to the successful bidder. There is information on Orchard. So, you know, my hope is that there is enough supporting information on those 2 sites where an architect doesn't have to start from square one, maybe can start from square D, who knows. But the hope is that this is not going to be a long process, Jed, and that it's not going to be extremely costly. But, you know, again, with Measure B, we're talking millions of dollars. We're now talking 3 services between residential, crisis, and a 24-hour facility. And we keep wanting to rush this process. And we can rush it into major, major mistakes. And so, you know, I think that, I don't think, if you look at the time frame, we're working, this is really a very good time frame. We're working as quick as we can with all of this to still try to comply with regulations and the law. And so, you know, I would hate to see us spend any more time going over which locations we even have and if those locations should still be part of it when we're a month away from getting proposals in. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Angelo. Member Liberty?
So trying to answer all these questions. So the proposers were asked to consider these 2 sites, the Orchard and Howard Hospital, but also any site they thought would be feasible in the Ukiah Valley. So they were kind of the RFP and at the meeting.
The unincorporated.
Oh, sorry. So she just corrected me and said the unincorporated area. Okay. And so,
Here's the reason.
Here, let me help you with that. There you go. So, anyways, so I wanted to tell you that, right? And they're actually the RFP and staff was very careful to try not to direct them in a certain direction, but I talked about the sense of urgency I'd like to instill in the proposers on timeline, but it's not appropriate for any of us, I think, to go talk to any of the proposers.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, right? This is how we reach out to them, right? This is how we communicate that to them, a sense of urgency, bringing something like this up in the meeting. That was probably why I didn't pull it off. So I didn't take it off the agenda already. A way to communicate to them appropriately that time is of the essence. And then the other thing was, we're talking about if it doesn't go. Tom was talking about if it doesn't go on Orchard Street, you hate to go through all the architectural work and then find out that we're not going to use that site. But as I said in the May 22nd meeting, it would go anywhere. You could take that design and put it on a flat 2 acres anywhere, and I was told that it wouldn't work just anywhere because of drainage and solar concerns. Really, come on, I don't buy that. I think it could go anywhere on a flat 2 acres, but I just wanted to address those.
You said it wouldn't be wasted is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, and God put erasers on pencils for a reason, and architects know how to use them. It wouldn't be a tear up, right?
Gotcha.
You would have 2 or 3 months worth of work done in parallel. Now, if as staff is indicating that they're gonna do that anyways, okay, no harm, no foul, we're going a good path. So right now, they're talking February, and shortly after that, we should have a biddable design. Let's see, we shall see.
Thank you, Member Liberty. Member Myrtle.
I wanted to comment concerning the RFP feasibility in 2 different locations. Specifically, the hospital in Willits, part of what we're considering as a top unit, which is a mental hospital. The other reason that was potentially considered is it's a remodel of an existing hospital for a hospital, so that kind of inherently makes a little sense. Orchard is a bare piece of ground, so I think we should be using feasibility studies to determine what's the better value as far as cost is concerned, as well as use. I disagree a little bit with what Ross says about designing something prior to deciding where it's going, because part of the design for a remodel is completely different than the design for a new piece of property. So I think hire your architect, feasibility, make a decision on what you're gonna do, present, and then design. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Member Myrtle. Member Angela?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I just want to say that the original question I think that Jed had was, do the bidders or proposers understand the importance here? Maybe it was the sheriff, but we had a meeting with them, an initial conference with them, of which Member Liberty was a part of, and I think that we were firm with the importance of Measure B, the importance of what we're doing. I will also say that the people around the room that we believe will submit proposals, many of them were very familiar with Measure B, had done some of the reading, had watched some of our meetings. So I'm confident that the successful bidder will have an understanding. And I also want to comment on what Ross said about a 3rd site. Both of these sites that we're looking at, that this committee wants to look at, or wants us to look at, both of those sites, one is in the city of Ukiah, one is in the city of Willits. Well, we know there has been, multiple concerns back and forth. We've heard many things. The city of Willits doesn't want this. The city of Willits doesn't have a problem with this. I mean, it has been back and forth and back and forth. Depends on who you talk to and what day. that is still a possibility that if Howard Hospital comes back with a cost-benefit analysis that shows that this is the better site, however, we think that there's going to be a lengthy process and one that in the end, we may not be successful at, that has to weigh into that decision. And then also with the city of Ukiah, Orchard Street is in the city of Ukiah. There's nothing that says that the city of Ukiah is going to open their arms to this project either. So the reason that we have a third statement in there, or an additional statement that says, or any other location that may be beneficial to this project, is if there is another location in the unincorporated area that would be under the county planning department, that we would recognize that site. As of today, there's nothing. We're not looking at anything, we're not researching anything. It is these two locations. But I wanted to be clear with this committee on what Ross was talking about.
Thank you, Member Angelo. Member Miller?
So I just wanted to add one quick thing. When we kind of first started the committee, we talked a little bit about how the county had a grant through CHAPA, about $500,000 to build a crisis residential treatment. And we have gone in front of CHAPA a couple of times to ask for extensions. We are now in front of CHAPA again asking for extensions, and why this is important is because they are sort of looking at giving us an extension based on the current RFP we have out. So if we made changes to that, we probably will lose $500,000 if we made a decision today to go back to the board and have them change the RFP. So I think that's important. I think timelines are important, so yes, and I think even for CHAPA, our timelines are important, but I want to remind us, since we started the CHAPA grant with a crisis residential, the process has changed, and with Measure B, the process changed with bringing Measure B, and as we look at the process as a committee on doing a crisis residential, crisis stabilization, and PUF, CHAPA has kind of followed Measure B in that process and continued to say, you know, we're going to follow this process as long as you guys stay committed to the process of a crisis residential on some level. And they reviewed our current RFP and are willing to allow us to come back in September and give an update. So for me, I would hate to see anything change in that process, because I think if anything changes, they probably will not continue to grant us an extension on our $500,000 award. So.
Thank you, Member Miller. Anybody else from the committee? Public? Hearing none, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we don't need to make an action.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So we'll move on to agenda item number 3G, discussion and possible action regarding report from the Kemper Report Ad Hoc Committee. Member McGordy, please.
So let me see if I can find it. In May, we formed an ad hoc committee to go over the recommendations in the Kemper report that do not refer to services. So the committee met, and present were Dr. Miller, Donna, CEO Angelo, and we went through this brief study guide on the action and policy and proposed strategic financing. And it was noticed that a couple of the items that we looked at were already being taken care of. So we concentrated on the financial items. And so what we came up with, and you have this in your packet, are 3 recommendations that we would like to see this committee, what do we call this, Measure B committee, recommend to the Board of Supervisors. The first one is to maintain a prudent reserve. The second one is a separate accounting of Measure B revenues and expenditures with an annual accounting and an outside audit done every 3 to 5 years. I mean, we already have that from the accounting. And then a 10-year strategic plan, which is really important to create a plan so we have some kind of guide for where we're going and what's, you know, we can expect in the next 10 years and where the money can fall regarding facilities and services. Any committee?
Do I have committee comment?
Well, I'll comment on number 2. The Measure B funds are kept separate from the general fund in a restricted reserve fund that is part of an annual audit by an outside independent CPA. So every year that fund is being looked at and audited along with all the other funds in the county. So it's part of the annual audit. It's not an exclusive audit for just that one restricted fund. So we could go to the expense of doing that every 3 to 5 years if that's something the board agrees. But I am making sure that it's included in our annual audit every year from an independent CPA. So let's see.
Thank you, Member Webb. Anyone else? Member Liberty, sorry.
I just wanted to ask, is that audit available on the county website, and is it?
Yeah, it's included in the audit.
And in any other way publicized at all, or? That's the public notification.
Yeah,
That's the extent
it's
of it.
an annual audit that appears on our website each year after it's completed.
Thank you, Member Liberty. Member Riley?
My question, if I may, is for Member McGorty, wondering if Mr. Weir's comments about the audit satisfy the committee's concerns here, or are there additional concerns that are not being met by the county's processes already?
Well, offhand, I would say for the current action that we're doing with Measure B funds, that's quite sufficient. But I think once things get really complicated, when we're building a bunch of facilities and providing supplemental services, it might be appropriate to have a separate audit.
Member Myrtle?
I think it's premature to make these recommendations to the board because we're not sure what we're spending our money on. How do we have a 10-year strategic plan when we don't know what we're building or servicing or doing? So I don't think it's prudent to bring this recommendation to the board at this time. I'm not against building a reserve, but I'd like to know what we're spending our money and potentially how much it is before we already hamstring ourselves with 12.5% reserve.
Any other member comment? Member McGorty?
I don't think it's, I think it's good to think now about a strategic plan because looking backwards at a strategic plan, strategic planning is looking ahead. So it's like, okay, well, we expect to have this much money, this is how we expect to have it spent. Plans are something that can be changed, but to say, oh, we're gonna wait until we know how much money we can spend or how much this is gonna cost before we make a plan, then we won't know if it's gonna fit into the plan. And having a prudent reserve is something that you plan ahead for, like see what's left over and then say, oh, that's our prudent reserve. It's my understanding. I'm not an MBA.
Oh, excuse me, sorry, Member Diamond.
I think for me, I resonate with both what Jan and Mark are saying. I think we already do have a plan that we're operating from. I don't think we're just operating in the dark. We have the Kemper report and we've moved ahead on those. We have some things in the works which we discussed today. So my sense is that we've got the beginning of a plan, and I would agree with Mark that I'd like to see the outcome of this plan before we do the next stage of a plan. So I think all the things that you've suggested, I think are useful to do. I just think maybe waiting till we actually get these things in order would give us a better chance to see where the planning we've already done then will relate to what we'd want to do over a fairly long period of time. Hence, so that's my thought.
Thank you, Member Diamond. Member Myrtle?
First and foremost, I want to say that I do think we should have a strategic plan. I do think we should have a reserve. I don't know about the separate audit report. However, I think what can happen and has happened in this committee is we lose focus on what we're trying to do primarily. And I think, from my standpoint, CSU, CRT, we focus on those things and getting those things built, and then we focus on other things. So that's all on the point I'm trying to make.
Thank you, Member Myrtle. Member Miller?
So I want to add that I think a strategic plan is good to have before you start. One of the things we need to decide as we're looking at what we're building, can we afford to build it and sustain it long term? And if we're not looking at our finances now, we build buildings and we can't sustain it because we financially didn't review what are the staffing needs, what are the long-term consequences, what are we going to have to pay to staff that, what kind of insurance are we going to bring in, and will it pay for itself, or will there be a deficit that has to be covered by Measure B dollars? If we're not looking at that today and we make a decision that we're going to build 3 facilities and then have to go back and wonder how we fund it, I just have a concern with that. I think part of building your strategic plan allows you to see, not that it's perfect, but allows you to see what does that look like before we build everything and we make a decision on what we're going to build and then how we're going to fund it. I think having a reserve is always important. In the behavioral health world, most of our funding streams, they require that you have a reserve. We have to remember that as we operate, that there will be things that we operate these facilities that we will get audits through Medi-Cal, possibly Medicare. How will those funds be paid back? Because we know in the mental health world, we get audits every year, and we're constantly having to either get money from the state or pay the state back. So those are things yes, we can look at that later, but I am worried about not having a financial review of what we're doing today, and I think the strategic plan starts that. I also think we have a training center opening, and we want to look at how is that going to impact our budget overall, and is there some operating expense that's going to go in that, and that should be part of the strategic plan as we look at what we're doing.
Thank you, Member Miller. Member Myrtle?
So with the strategic plan if we come in, we plan for having a CSU, CRT, PUF unit, and we make a strategic plan for all of those. And in reality, we can't build all of those because the costs are too much. Then we've wasted valuable resources on things that we didn't really even have the money for. So I'm not against creating a strategic plan, and I'm 100% behind you, and I was going to mention this in my report, that before we build a multi-million-dollar facility, we need to have an operator to run it. So once we get an architect on board, we need to be submitting an RFP for some people to run the CRT, CSU, PUF units. And that's something that would have to be concurrent. So I'm not in disagreement of these recommendations. I'm in disagreement of the timing of the recommendation. That's all I'll say on the topic.
Anyone else on the committee? Yes, Member Riley.
I do support the development of a strategic plan, and I agree with the behavioral health's opinion that the Kemper financial plan is a good place to start. I don't think that this plan is something that has to take a lot of time or resources. I think it's important to have that type of plan, not just for this committee, but also for the public, so that they do know how we're prioritizing these funds. We're tasked with overseeing billions of dollars of the community's money here. And so to that end, I would like to make a motion that we do support the Behavioral Health Committee's recommendation to create a strategic plan. I'm not in support of creating a separate auditing process at this point, but I do think the discussion of the reserve should take place as part of the development of the financial strategic plan.
Do I have a second? I still need discussion and public comment.
A second.
Any more committee comment on that?
Yeah, it wasn't the behavioral health, it was Measure B ad hoc committee.
Measure B ad hoc committee.
Right.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't change my opinion.
Any other committee comments? Public comments, please. Please Mr. Wetzler stand up, state your name.
On my way. John Wetzler, Little River. I remember years ago when we started to build the Willow Terrace project through RCHDC, that we leveraged the funds that we got through RCHDC and from MHSA. We had $1.4 million, as I remember, from capital facilities funding. Are we, Lloyd, this is for you, are we able to leverage the funds that we bring in through our sales taxes? And can we look at leveraging our funds with tax credits to the community, to the state, to the actually the entire country? We no way we could have done 38 housing developments at all. We only had $1.4 million. That's all we had. They brought in millions and millions of dollars, and now we have 38 units that are populated by seriously mentally ill people that they brought the money in to build. Now, someone else may know that that is something that we can't do with this kind of money, but I think that it's something that we should look at. And I think that our money problems would evaporate if we could somehow try that out. Also, I had another thing I wanted to bring up earlier. Tom, I heard you on radio.
Mr. Wexler,
Yes.
you're supposed to address yourself to the chair.
Chair,
I know
hi,
you're
Chair.
very aware
I'm
of
sorry.
that.
Yeah, I am aware of that. But I let people talk to people other than me. I wanted to indicate that most modern construction now is done modularly. All high rises. I've worked on many high rises in Los Angeles, many buildings throughout Los Angeles. A lot of it is modular and very high quality. And most of it is done by modular construction now. I just want to state that to hope that in the RF, I guess it's already out, but I wouldn't set aside and not consider modular construction. There was just a big puff unit put at Ridgeway in Inyo County, that 16-bed, it was all done by modular construction. I gave you a photograph of it. It's an outstanding looking building with adobe walls, and it was modular construction. And they take care of all the permitting, the architectural work, everything. So it's something that I think this committee should look at. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wetzler. Anyone else from the committee? Please step up.
Joe Bradley, as far as the strategic plan, I sat on a lodging board and our tourism boards for 18 years. And we tried to do some of this planning ourselves. And we found that we needed direction. And we actually hired a company, and they came in. We had some people from the outside, we had our board, and in less than a day, we had a strategic plan through a process that they did. And it's a strategic plan that we use to this day. And it's actually laminated and put in front of every board member at every meeting so people can focus on it. And I found that to be really, really helpful. It was worth the time because it was a special meeting that we had to call and we had to Brown Act, but it was absolutely a great process, and we have something we can focus on if we lose focus.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett.
You're welcome.
Any other public comment? No. Yes, Mr. Myrtle?
So if we were to create the strategic plan, the strategic plan would earmark specific funding sources for specific aspects of all the money. Is that correct? Question.
Well, it's already in the Kemper report what the categories would be.
So we already have a strategic plan.
Pretty much, we have a suggestion and that's what it states. It just
So-
hasn't been recommended that that's what we do.
We're going to the board to ask what we already have.
Well, if we have, you know.
We don't have the control to make our own decisions, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
We're asking the board to create a strategic plan, and here, you don't have to even work at it, because here it is. Now give it back to us so we can do it.
They need to, right, thank you. Would you please mind restating that?
I said, we could ask the board to adopt the Kemper recommendations as a strategic or financial plan. So you're not asking them to create it.
So, any other comments anywhere? Could you please read?
Yes. And I didn't catch if the motion was seconded, I'm sorry.
It was.
By Mr. Diamond.
Mr. Diamond.
Okay.
So what's the motion? Are
We're-
we-
Yes,
she's gonna reread it.
Just one moment. I have a motion by Member Riley, seconded by Member Diamond, to support the ad hoc committee's recommendation to create a strategic plan with no separate audit process at this point. Prudent reserve conversation should take place as part of the strategic plan. Is that correct, Member Riley?
That is correct. Just as general commentary, I agree with the fact that Kemper's financial plan is a good place to start. I don't think that needs to be part of the motion here.
Correct with your second, Member Diamond? Do we have any further discussion?
Quick question. So the ad hoc would bring us a rough draft of a general plan, of a specific plan, strategic plan, with the ad hoc put on the agenda, so we would spend an hour discussing it. I guess I'm wondering what the ad hoc would present to this committee.
Oh, I think it's already there in the Kemper report.
It is,
The
so
10-year
can we
strategic
assume the ad hoc would prepare a rough draft of a strategic plan and bring it for discussion?
Sure. So you want it to wait another meeting?
No, no, he's asking a question. We have a motion on the floor. We're discussing it. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Okay.
Wait a minute, okay, I don't hear a bunch of stuff, so hands, please. All those in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I need the no's.
L knows. 2. Any abstentions? Any abstentions?
So all ayes of Member Myrtle, and we're dissenting, is that correct? Thank you.
Okay, motion carries. Now I gotta look at my notes. Committee member reports, please. Ms. Miller.
So we made a motion, passed a motion for an ad hoc committee. Is that gonna be cited today, or is that gonna be on the agenda for next month?
Excuse me, it should be a standing agenda item.
I'm talking about the committee members. Are we gonna keep the same committee? We're changing the focus of this,
Right.
what was presented. And so are we to assume the same people on this ad hoc are doing the strategic planning ad hoc?
Through the Kemper report, that would be my statement. If that's objectable, we need to clear that up.
Well, there's apples and oranges here. It's one thing to talk about the Kemper report, there's another thing to say, well, we're going to do the strategic plan for the Measure B committee. And I'm not opposed to it, but that's not clarified for the committee members or the public. And I think it's fair to clarify who are the ad hoc committee members, because when the ad hoc committee members were put on the Kemper report, it was very specific for the Kemper report.
True.
So my understanding is that this is going to the Board of Supervisors as a recommendation with an attachment of the Kemper report proposed strategic plan, and the ad hoc committee
No,
no longer exists. That's not true?
That's not true.
No.
Okay.
So the motion is for the ad hoc committee to, recommendations to create a strategic plan. That's the,
Okay.
so whether the strategic plan comes back to this committee or goes directly to the board is the discussion of this committee.
Member Angelo.
This was going to come up during committee member reports, but we are very close to having a project manager. So what you might want to consider. I mean, when you talk about, writing a plan, that's quite a bit of work, and it doesn't matter what who the committee members are, how many. So, I would think about table this until we have our project manager, which should be within a month. And then you can have the project manager have this as an assignment to work with the committee, to work with the ad hoc and develop a plan. That is just, I'm not making a recommendation, you already have one on the table, but if I could revise it, that's how I would revise it, to table it until our project manager starts and get the project manager.
We passed the motion.
So,
It can always be amended, it can always be sorry, wait, I'm getting a shake hand on, but it can be, we passed the motion, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
If I might just interject, I believe that the motion stands as it is. I think the board could make a directive that they
Thank you.
could wait for the project manager to proceed with the strategic plan.
I need to educate myself a little more. Thank you.
I'm just supporting the recommendation. Yeah, it wasn't direction.
Sure.
so the clerk read it and said, I believe it's allow the ad hoc committee, and I thought the motion was allow a ad hoc committee.
No, so
No,
I'll
it's
repeat the motion if you'd like, actually. The action now is to support the ad hoc committee's recommendation. So this ad hoc
Okay,
committee's
okay.
recommendation to create a strategic plan. No separate audit process at this point, and credit reserve conversations should take place as part of the strategic plan.
So the motion does not say who the ad hoc committee
It
is.
does
Okay.
not.
Thank you.
Any more clarification on anything? See, you should never have me as chair.
And then,
Doing a great job, actually.
Committee member reports.
okay,
None. Member McGordy.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I want to set up a tour of the Grass Valley facility with the Behavioral Health Board, and if anybody on this committee is interested, let me know and you can be included.
Member Angela?
Member McGordy brought this up earlier, and then of course I just brought it up, is that we did our interviews. We had a first panel and a second panel to interview our project manager. We had multiple applications, and we had some good candidates. And the last interview was sometime this week, I believe. And it was Monday afternoon. It was the sheriff, myself, and Member McGordy. We had 3 finalists, and we made a decision on the final candidate, and we made a job offer contingent upon references and a background check. And if everything checks out, and there's no reason to believe that it won't, we should have our project manager, hopefully, by our next Measure B committee meeting.
And thank you, committee, for doing that.
There was the first panel too, that I should mention. I don't remember who was on it.
I do, I was. Member Liberty? Nothing. Member Ware?
I don't have anything.
I do not either. Member Myrtle?
Just a few comments. Again, once we select an architect, I do think we need to be considering operators for facilities, namely the CRT, CSU, and HUF facilities. And with how long the RFPs take to create, I think that should be happening sooner rather than later. And because like others have mentioned, is we don't want to build or design a $20 million facility if we have no one to run it or have the resources to operate it. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Member Myrtle. Member Riley? Nothing to report. Sheriff Holman?
2 things. First of all, the MCIT, Mendocino Critical Incident Team, is going to have a training in October. I don't have the dates yet because we're going to meet at the Bartlett Hall. That's where the training is going to be. And the Presbyterian Church is getting back to us. But this is going to be on the coast for first responders on the coast. We're working with the Department of Mental Health for this. This is good. This is great. And then the second thing is, as was brought up, I was on KZYX, an interview last Friday, and in my role as sheriff, and certainly Measure B was discussed. And it's, I would imagine it's available on what they call the KZYX jukebox. That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Member Diamond.
Yes, this month I've been continuing to meet with the community in and around Willits, around discussions of the possible Old Howard Hospital. I met with city manager and numerous members of the city council and community members. And as this continues to move along, I'll continue to kind of pull the community, and people are finding me around community to give me their ideas and concerns. So that will continue, I'm sure.
Thank you. Yes.
If I could assist the sheriff, oops, I just closed it. I was asking for someone else the dates for the CIT meeting, and it's going to be apparently October 21st, 22nd, and 23rd.
No, that's Denise's training. August, did you say?
October?
Oh, I'm sorry. October 22nd?
21st, 22nd, and 23rd, that was what we got. I had
Well, it's not
asked
gonna
for
be at
those
Barton Hall
dates.
then, because we can't use it on Tuesday, so what council's saying is certainly in direct conflict with what I'm dealing with.
Okay, so I will, that's the information I was given, so,
I'll double check.
right.
Okay. Adjourn. Boom.
General.
Done.
Sorry, to assist.
No,